BTL, coming at you. Good Thursday, everybody. Welcome to BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Matthew, wrapping up the week, show number 4 of the week, show number 10 of 2019. And once again, it's a good one. We're going to have Florida seasoned vet Bernie Schultz on today. But the big news, day 1 of the Open, postponed.
Canceled.
Done. 2-day event now.
Yeah. So that was a cancellation.
Yeah.
We are now 3 for 3 on postponements or cancellations.
That's crazy. They showed a picture of the big front that was rolling through on the radar, but
that looked pretty serious.
I don't know. We're going to find out. We're going to talk a lot of Florida fishing with Bernie when we get him on here in about 5-10 minutes.
What do you think the over-under is? Now that there's 3 tours out here, you've got, 5 divisions of the Coastas, 4 divisions, 2 divisions of the Opens, the Elite Series, the FLW Tour, and the Bass Pro Tour. So far, 3 days have been either postponed or canceled when it is all said and done, and the last cast is made in 2019. What is the over-under on that number of days, Mark?
How many do we have already?
3. And it is January 24th.
7. We'll see if I'm right on that one. 7. You think that's a good number?
I think I'm going to take the over on that.
Really? Mm-hmm. All right, we'll see. 7 is the number. 7 is the number. All right, man. I am enormously fired up about this weekend. Haven't been this fired up for a while.
WWE in town?
No. That was Monday night. I didn't go.
Getting a haircut?
That's tomorrow.
Nike store opening?
That's actually...
Nike store opening?
No.
Sweater vest, 2 for 1?
No, look at this. Look at that.
The Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Milwaukee Bucks, the South Terrace Lounge.
Dude, these are big time tickets.
The high roll. Well, maybe you can find a sponsor for BTL who can make some more money then.
Big time tickets. All right.
Box 4.
Yeah. These are like...
Are you taking Carolyn?
Yeah.
It's like not a kid's deal.
No. These were given to us.
Hey, if you play $10 and receive $10 in bonus play, you get a free Thunder t-shirt.
Yeah.
How are they given to you?
Because we're good people.
Oh, how many did you get?
I got 4.
Oh, so you're taking the kids.
Haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
Maybe taking some of our friends.
These are almost as coveted as the post-game show tickets for the MLF.
Dude,
they take place.
These are big-time tickets, though. I don't even know.
They're laminated.
I know.
They're like, cool. You have to wear them around your neck to even be there.
Yeah. Plus, I get to see the Greek Freak. Do you know who the Greek Freak is?
Berglingulis Pergano.
How do you say his name? I can't even say it.
I know who you're talking about.
Yantis
Poglumlingus.
I'm not even going to try. Ante Akumpo.
There you go.
I'm close. I'm in the ballpark. He's got a really good shot of being MVP. So very, very excited. Look, man, parking tickets.
Sweet.
Even. So those are high dollar laminated big time stuff. They do that for every game.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's cool.
All right. I reached out yesterday. I tried to obtain the list of what squad, what round, what is it called anyway? A or B? Mm-hmm. A squad, B squad.
Who's fishing when?
Yeah.
No dice.
I got no response. I didn't even get hey, I'll get it to you as soon as I can.
Are we having some communication issues?
I got nothing.
Are we having communication issues?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they have more pressing issues. But at the same time, as I've told you numerous times, all it is just, hey, man.
Effort. It's about effort. So.
Yeah. So we'll continue to try, hopefully, on Monday. Hopefully we'll know by Monday on what the AB situation is on that. Until then, man, I was really kind of anticipating talking about the Open. You know how many people they had? 224, I believe, in the Open.
A great start.
That is a massive field.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how many of those guys, did you see a copy of the entry list? Sometimes they put that out on the website.
Yeah,
I didn't look.
I looked at it to see for elite MLF guys, if any of them were fishing it, and how many elite series, more elite series obviously than MLF guys.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple. I think Bobby Lane said he was fishing in it. And
Yeah.
guy, so
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm sure the fans across America are wondering, wow, 3 events already, 3
canceled or delay or
They're doing the right
postponed.
thing. They're doing the right thing. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it's the wussification of America, blah, 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 blah.
No, they're doing the right thing.
Safety has got to be their number
two
one
of
concern.
Two of them, if you look at it, it's a weird scenario because you had one that was on a border fishery in Amistad. You don't want to mess around with that with rough conditions and get blown into Mexico.
Yeah.
Then the Rayburn one was a weird deal because the water was up 9 feet. So that made it a lot more dangerous with the windy conditions. I mean, that was a sketchy tournament to begin with.
That front today looked nasty.
Yeah, and now this one, so.
Yeah.
And it's an open, not an elite series, so you're not dealing with, I know they call them pros, you're not dealing with professionals.
Well, you are.
Not all open pros are professionals, Mark.
Did you just admit that? Dude.
Admit it, I'm not the one who said it.
Okay.
I think there should be a qualifying structure to even fish the Costas or Opens.
Have I not been screaming that for years? Q school, man. Q school.
Exactly.
That's what you need. All right, what else? That was going to be the big story of the day, but obviously it turned into the cancellation of the day. You know, I was all teed up. I saw that this morning. I was just like, man, that really sucks because I wanted to
also
talk about it. Now we can talk to Bernie about how that front and how temperamental Florida bass are and what that might do to the Harris chain. So we'll get into that
apparently
here in a few minutes.
Balsa or the wood bait market is also temperamental.
You're blowing things up.
I'm not. Gerald is. We had that talk where I was talking about that little old crankbait that I flipped, and then there's this deal on. He's like, "What have you done?" I got a text, and I look at it. They're like going for a lot of money now.
Yeah.
It'll be a temporary. It's like the wiggle warts on there.
You think?
Guys will pay
just
like
a spike.
100, and then it'll go back.
Supply and demand.
Go back to normal.
Pretty simple principles there.
How many wiggle warts do you think are out there? Original ones. Because everyone's like, oh, you can't get them anymore. But
Thousands.
They keep showing up.
Thousands. I can't imagine how many Jim Morton has.
Yeah.
I bet he's got at least 500.
I want to do a 20 feet deep on that.
Yeah. I bet he's at least got 500, maybe more.
Bernie would be a great guy to ask about that too, because he's into collecting the vintage lures.
Yeah.
At what point does a lure go from old to vintage? Like, is a Big O a vintage, or is that just an old one? Are there vintage wiggle warts and then old wiggle warts? Like, where is the determining factor?
I'm sure it's a year. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the year.
We'll ask him because he would know. He's an expert on
Did you ever use a Sluggo?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. At Camp Silka.
I remember that was the thing down at Lake Fork back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Had the hook
80s.
with it, bubblegum colored.
Well, there the color was black and gold.
It had like a long shanked offset hook.
Yeah.
That came with it.
Do they still sell them? I don't even know if they still sell them.
I'm sure they do.
Huh. This is a Florida thing, too. As I've told you before, Matthew, I spent 30-plus years ago my honeymoon in Florida. And you know what I did on my honeymoon?
Yeah, the lunker. Oh, what?
I went fishing. I went to Toho.
Oh, nice.
And the guy that I went out with used a black and blue worm.
And a Sluggo?
And a Sluggo.
Yeah, the Lunker City Sluggo on Tackle Warehouse is $5.99.
Interesting.
You also get them at Bass Pro.
Interesting. All right, derbies this weekend for you?
Just a jackpot.
That's it?
Yep.
Supposed to be somewhat nice this weekend for you.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you can go out and have a little success. And then I want to tell everybody, moving forward to next week, we will have our schedule posted on what we're doing next week. Tomorrow, I know for a fact that on Tuesday, we're going to have Dave Rush live from Lake Toho to hopefully give us some kind of insight on what's going on down there. And then I'm working on some other stuff. Hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, Matthew, that we're going to be able to tie in maybe some of the guys that are actually on their off day. All right, but they are going to have commitments that they're going to have to do some things during their off day. Hopefully they can squeeze in and we can get somebody on the show during their off day. So that's kind of the plan for next week. And then the following week, Boyd Duckett has already committed to that Tuesday. He will be on the show live via Skype to give us his take on the first event that took place at Lake Toho. I know a number of people on the instant feedback were asking to get Boyd back on the show. So he will be on the following Tuesday of the Lake Toho event. And then all of a sudden, man, we are ready to kick things off on the Elite Series.
We had Brandon on when? Yesterday?
Yes.
So he drives from Idaho to Florida, gets the rig sets up, then jumps on a plane and is in Schaumburg, Illinois today at the Chicagoland Fishing Show.
That's pretty cool.
And then we'll fly back and compete at the MLF event.
That's what happens when you're a rock star, I guess. I don't know. That's impressive, though.
That's what I was looking at my phone was. I wanted to make sure that I had seen that correct, and I wanted to make sure we brought that up today. That's
cool.
Pretty baller.
Yeah.
He drives to the event and then flies to a different state and then drives back or flies back.
That's impressive. All right, we're going to take a break. Come back with Bernie Schultz. Talk a little Florida fishing right here on a Thursday, wrapping up a great, great week. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Sleek new design with easy control file. The clearest images underwater with uncompromising range. Live mapping from the touchscreen. View notifications, video, even Google Maps on screen. And for the first time ever, real-time view of fish movements with live sight sonar. HDS Live. New from Lowrance.
It's about the hours spent getting everything just right. It's the attention to detail. Good just isn't good enough. It's the years spent on the water day after day. When you tie on a bait by Strike King, you're standing on the shoulders of legends.
Pros depend on hydraulic jack plates to get the best out of their boats. Do what they do. Demand Atlas performance. Atlas gets you from the bottom to the top in less than 8 seconds, even with the big 4 strokes. And when you gotta turn right around and get that heavy load back up in rough water, Atlas's innovative design and American-made components will get you there with confidence.
I'm at Depot. Just look for yourself. There's an Atlas jack plate on just about every professional's boat.
The Atlas hydraulic jack plate. You can depend on it.
Hey guys, Aaron Martins here. I'm going to be telling you about a new product by Sunline. It's Siglon PE x8. I've been using it almost extensively all year for my frogging, flipping, drop shotting, shaky heading, worming, jerk baiting. It's by far my favorite Sunline braid. I honestly, I don't say this unless I think it's true, but honestly it's the best braid in the market out of any of the braids. Definitely check it out. It's a price point line, $14.95 for 165 yards, and that could last you a whole year, just one spool with using leader material. It's Siglon PE x8. It's my favorite braid, and I think if you use it, it'll be your favorite braid too. AFCO has a new foul weather rain suit called the Hydronaut. A lot of the features that I really like about it first is the speed vent hood. If it's raining out, you know, how a person gets wet is when you run down the lake and the hood comes down. With the speed vent hood, it's going to stay up. It has a camera mount in the pocket on the chest. The Hydronaut has a 2-layer, 100% waterproof nylon shell. If you're interested in a rain suit that has a lot of cool features that's going to keep you dry, you need to check out the Hydronaut from AFCO.
All right, we are back. Mark and Matt in studio, closing out the week.
Did you see that on the Bassmaster Open blog?
What was that?
I believe that Kota Kuriyama, who is fishing it, is running a Tohatsu motor.
How big?
Tohatsu.
Yeah, I've heard of it. How big?
I don't know. It looks fancy though. I mean, it looks like it looks like a normal size motor, like a 250 horsepower motor.
Huh.
Tohatsu.
Have you not seen those before? They make a lot of smaller engines.
Yeah, but I have not seen one on the back of a bass boat yet.
Huh.
He took a picture of a fish.
What color is it? Silver?
It's black, but it's got this like honeycomb stuff on the top on the cowling. I can't tell whether that is a decal or whether it is actually like the cowling has like honeycomb openings in the top.
Huh. I'll check it out. All right, you ready to bring in our guest, our next guest? Wrapping up the week here, a man that's been in this game for a number of years, seasoned vet, and I thought it'd be a great idea to get him on to talk a little bit about Florida fishing and also his involvement with the process of being on the Elite Series and the conference that took place, which very, very nice piece, if you haven't read it, over on Bassmaster.com that Bernie did.
Absolutely. I think you kind of undersold his longevity in the sport. 320 tournaments with bass.
I said seasoned vet.
Yeah.
It's a lot of tournaments. So a man that has been entrenched in this game and one of the best promoters at any of the shows that if you get an opportunity to hear Bernie speak, it is very, very nice, and you will learn a lot from hearing Bernie talk.
And guess what will happen to him this year?
What's that?
He will break the $1 million earnings mark with bass.
Should we ask him how much he spent? We better not ask him that. All right, let's bring him in. Bernie, you there, man?
Yes, I am. Good morning, guys.
All right, thanks for taking time out, man. We really appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit about Florida fishing. And day one, you know, I was all hyped about talking about day one of the very first BASS event being the Open on the Harris Chain, but man, day one canceled. Those massive fronts that come through with all that rain. How is that going to affect the following days, Bernie?
Well, I tell you, I didn't get any sleep last night. It was a heck of a storm. It started about 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm about an hour and I don't know, hour, 20 minutes from the Harris Chain. And, I think Chris Bose should have probably postponed the takeoff, not cancel the day, because it's pretty nice outside right now. And I know it's passed through their area also. But to answer your question, once this front gets here, I think those guys are going to wish they had been fishing today instead of tomorrow.
That much of an effect.
It's going to suck tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I mean, significant temperature drops with a high pressure really shut the Florida bass down this time of year, and it's supposed to get pretty chilly. We've had cold weather already this week and a couple of small fronts before that. Winter's just now getting here. I've been wearing shorts and throughout December and most of January until last week. So it's here now, and the fish will probably respond negatively to it.
Have you ever smashed them in Florida in a post-massive cold front, bundled up? I mean, just fun fishing. You've been there for, just so many years and fished so much. Has there ever been a time where it just went against all and you had a 30-pound just fun fishing or anything? Or is it pretty much you're screwed when this type of weather?
It's funny you mentioned that. The last time we were at the Harris Chain on the Elite Series, Shaw Grigsby, I believe it was the last time, he won the event I'm referring to, and he and I were fishing the same couple of canals. The front came in the evening after the first competition day. The fish weren't really up and doing it yet. The bucks had built their beds, and they were kind of pacing around waiting on some females to show up. A massive front hit that night. The temperatures dropped into the higher 20s. And I totally wrote off the bedding fish. I said, that's done. I'm going to fish on the main lake. I'm going to fish eelgrass. I'm going to fish, hydrillo. I'm going to fish deeper grass on the main lake. And that's what I did. And lo and behold, Shaw comes in with like a record stringer that afternoon. Not just Shaw, but there were other people in the same couple of canals, and they slaughtered them too. And it was just a hard lesson to learn. That went against all the rules. That particular event.
Wow.
That was the one with Grant Golbeck, where Golbeck had one fish for 2 pounds the first day and then came in with like 30-something the second day and jumped. He ended up finishing second in that event. I think it's the biggest comeback in Elite Series history. And Shaw and him were kind of dueling it out in that canal.
That was the first time we did live from the water. We actually camped out from the dude.
You broke into a senior living community.
I did not.
Yes, you did. The night before, you found out where these canals were. You broke into the senior living community, and then it said, this is the backyards that we need to get in. So then Dave and I went the next day with the cameras. I think the guy's name was Earl.
The guy's name was Earl. He cooked you hot dogs and hamburgers.
We just knocked on the door and said, hey, listen, we've got a couple cameras. We freelance for this. There's a big tournament going on in your backyard right now. Can we set the camera up? And Errol's like, oh, hell yeah.
Bring it in.
So then all the neighbors came out, and before we knew it, they were grilling, and they had it pulled up on in the house, and it turned into like this party where we were 10, 20 yards from Grigsby and Golbeck dueling it out.
Yeah, it was
I'll
pretty
never
cool.
forget that.
Very, very cool. All right, Bernie. Being from Florida and obviously spending a lot of time in Florida, I'm curious from a practice perspective, like going into the St. Johns River, is that a good thing to have all that experience in Florida and really any event that you participate in Florida? What is the strategy when you're from Florida when it comes to fishing events in Florida?
Man, it depends on the body of water. I mean, on Okeechobee, my strategy is to find fish on different sides of the lake so that I can adjust with the weather. If the wind's coming out of the north, I want to make sure I have places on the north end of the lake. If it's coming out of the south, I want to make sure I have places on the south end of the lake. That's not as much of a factor on the St. Johns, except for Lake George. And Lake George is susceptible to bad weather and high winds. So I try to apply that basic approach there also. But with regard to the rest of the river, wind's not really a factor. You can fish just about anywhere in a gale. The Harris Chain has plenty of places to hide. So, I guess it's weather related, but then you got to factor in seasonal patterns and migration of the fish. Are they moving into the canals? Are they offshore? Are they relating to bars on the river? Are they moving to the shoreline or to the bedding areas? It's all about movement this time of year, or lack of movement.
Are there any fisheries in Florida that don't have grass? I was thinking about that the other day, and I was going through the list of everywhere where people fish. I mean, you go to any other state, yeah, there's states that have more grass, but are there any tournament bodies of water in Florida that are grass-free?
Yeah, you just hit a hot button right there. We're suffering from a lot of poor management down here right now. There's been indiscriminate spraying of aquatic vegetation going on for a couple of years now, and they've decimated vegetation across the state in numerous lakes, primarily Okeechobee, Istapoga. I can't blame them for the St. Johns River because a lot of that's related to the hurricanes and high water. But there is just way too much spraying going on in the state. Rodman Reservoir, I challenge you to find a blade of grass, submerged vegetation, try to find some in that reservoir. And it used to be lush green fields of grass. When you eliminate that habitat, you're eliminating places to find fish or for fish to forage and seek shelter. And it's a sad statement about our commission down here that's supposed to be taking care of our fisheries. But to answer your question, normally no. There's usually every lake in the state has some form of vegetation, whether it's shoreline grass or offshore submerged grass beds or both, or even floating vegetation. But right now, our lakes are in sad shape.
Is that something you've seen before? Is that a cyclical thing where then people will realize, our lakes are sick, and then they'll let the grass grow? Or is this kind of something new that you've never seen before in your life to this extent?
Sadly, I've seen it before. They've destroyed lakes in my area. Orange and Loch Loosa, back when I first started fishing when I was in college, you could find lily pads growing in 8 to 10 feet of water, healthy, lush lily pad fields in deep water. And now I challenge you to find 6 feet of water in that lake. And we're under record rainfall. We've had hurricanes and we've had repetitious fronts of just stalling over the state and dumping tons of rain. Our lakes are up and flush. Now, Okeechobee, they're pulling the water out of, but just about every other waterway, especially in the north part of the state, is at full pull. And that bottom is just getting shallower and shallower. It's got a thick humus layer of dead vegetation after decades of spraying, and it's a sad statement. It really is. And for some reason, I mean, I'm not a biologist and I'm not involved with what's going on, the mechanics of all this, but I can tell you that they dump those chemicals whether they need to or not, and it's sad. It makes you wonder, are they on a budget situation where if they don't dump them, they don't get the money next year? Or who's governing all this? And somebody needs to answer for it. It's really gotten bad.
Wow.
I'd heard the stuff from Okeechobee, and I knew that there's some stuff going on there with like the keeping the water up or keeping the water down. I didn't realize it was spread out across the state so much.
It's been going on for decades.
Wow. All right, Bernie, I want to touch on your visit to, I believe it was Birmingham, where all of the Elite Series pros conveyed. Is that right?
Yeah. What are we calling it? A meeting, a summit,
convention,
a rally, a meet and greet?
In my column, I called it an orientation. We were invited there to meet the guys at Bass and JM Productions, who, those guys document Bass Live or the live show, and also Bassmaster, the TV show. It was just a meet and greet. The first day, they took us to the stadium for the local baseball team, and had dinner there, and got to know people. And then the next day was all about orientation and prepping and letting us know what's ahead on this year's schedule and after, and the way they're going to approach covering these events. They've stepped up huge. We've got more than double what we had in TV airtime on ESPN, and also I believe it's the Pursuit Channel is the other platform they're using. And then they're going to 4 days live on the live show on Bassmaster.com, and also there's going to be more cameras than ever on the water. So the fans will be treated to a lot more fishing, and hopefully less commentary, or at least not less commentary, but less look at the commentators. I like to see the guys fishing while we hear the commentary personally, but I like Zona, I like Davey Height, I like Mercer. They're all great guys, but I don't need to see them as much as hear them.
It's a great point. I guess you don't see the guys in the booth for the golf. Well, the golf is on for like 9 hours, and they'll like maybe briefly show them when they come back for a break about midway through the round. They'll do a recap, and other than that, is it Roger Maltby?
Johnny Miller.
And Johnny Miller and all those guys. You only see them a couple minutes out of like an 8-hour show.
Exactly. And that was my point. Those guys are awesome. They're talented, very insightful. Their commentary's, unmatched, but I don't need to see the studio. I mean, from an angler's perspective, I think they should be focused on what's happening on the water and heard in the background, personally. That's me.
And then you go the other side of the coin. I mean, you have sponsors for the live and all that, and you got the people from the sponsors that are writing the checks going, well, we want to see our logo that's in the studio that you guys built, so we feel like we're getting our bang for the buck too. But
yeah. Bernie, you've been through every aspect of the Elite Series. I mean, from start to finish, you've seen when ESPN owned it, now change in ownership again here a few years ago. What's the longevity of what they are telling you guys right now, in your opinion? Is this sustainable for the future?
I think it is. I went up there with a lot of cautious optimism. I went to that meeting wondering, are these guys really going to be able to compete and deliver and hold their position? And after leaving Birmingham, I can tell you I'm fully on board. I believe they will maintain their position. I think they'll dominate the platform like they have. True, it is true that a lot of the talent left, most of the talent left probably, but there's a lot of new talent coming up. And this isn't the first time this has happened. You guys know when FLW announced its tour, there was an exodus then. Larry Nixon, Tommy Martin, Roland Martin, Jay Yellis, Mark Davis, a lot of guys on top of their game at that time left the Bass Tour to go to FLW. And it wasn't long after that when Skeet Reese and Mike Iaconelli and a whole new generation of guys took over. So I think you'll see that same transformation again. I can tell you the guys they recruited from FLW and some guys coming up from the Opens and some of the elite guys that they invited back, they're going to carry the banner. It's going to be a strong statement going forward. I don't see us really falling behind at all.
In your 30 years of doing this, have you ever seen a group of guys get along so well in professional fishing with all 75 heading into the season? It seems like, right now it's kind of like everybody's patting each other on the back,
You're
holding
singing
hands.
Kumbaya.
Yeah. Oh, you need a couple baits? I'll hook you up. Let's carpool down there. We know how the reality of this is. Is this going to last all year? When are we going to get back to the, screw that guy, I don't want him to make the cut type of stuff that we've gotten used to?
Yeah, just wait till day one of the St. John's. It'll be gloves on and every man for himself kind of battle. But, it's a professional level tour. All of them are. And most of the guys have respect for each other. Most of the guys do things right. There's a few that cut corners and I guess when you're talking about that much money and so much on the line, they do kind of desperate things. But for the most part, it's very professional and a lot of mutual respect out there.
All right, Bernie. One thing that I mentioned in the Open when Matt and I were talking, we were talking about how excellent you are as far as representing the companies that you do. You do a fantastic job. Matt and I have had the discussion numerous times that so many times performance sells. There is other things, obviously, that go with performance. But from a performance standpoint, you've really kind of struggled the last few years. This year, kind of renewed vigor and enthusiasm, would that kind of set the tone? What, when you reflect back, what do you think that you really need to change, if anything, and how are you going to approach 2019?
Well, both you guys know that's the $1 million question. If we knew how to fix it, none of us would have slumps, my career I was a lot more consistent when I was younger. I'll admit to that. The last couple of years have been a challenge. Last year was horrible. It was the worst career of my life. I think I was the lowest ranked active fisherman on the Elite Series last year, and that's embarrassing. And I'm going to tell you, I thought I was in good shape going into every event, maybe with the exception of one. I really felt like I was dialed into what was going on, and for whatever reason or reasons, the wheels came off. I either lost fish or somebody beat me to the areas I was trying to fish, or my timing was off. I mean, there's a million excuses, but none of them really amount to anything. It's on me. And the only answer I have for you is you got to fish through it. And I've experienced slumps before, and I've bounced back and had really good years or maybe a year the next year, and maybe turn that into a run of good years. I remember one year, Denny Brower was the last ranked elite at the end of the season. The next year he won Angler of the Year. So don't ever count anybody out in this sport.
All right. I'm curious, how does a Florida guy learn how to fish some of the Ozark lakes like Table Rock and Lake of the Ozarks? Through your history, what have you done to get that experience on that lake? Have you spent some time and just left Florida and spent a week, 2 weeks on some of those Ozark lakes?
No, I've never done that. Back in the day, the practice restrictions weren't near what they are now. I mean, you could go and basically you could fish a body of water right up to the event. Then they start imposing restricted practices and off limits. I do a little bit of pre-fishing. Sometimes it works. Other times it works against you. It's just seems like it's a case-by-case situation whether it works or not. This year I've done a little pre-fishing. I intend to do more. I'm motivated. I want to turn it around. I'm not done yet. I think there's still a lot of great fishing ahead of me. I got a new title sponsor. I'm excited about that, and a new look, and that'll debut at the St. Johns River, and so hopefully it's a clean new start.
Can you announce that? What is it? Can you
just
tell
said
us?
it would debut.
I mean, we'll make the look the debut, but Mercury Outboards will be my new title sponsor. All right. And I'm really excited about that. They've been my outboard sponsor since I began fishing professionally. All I've ever known is Mercury Outboards, and it just was really satisfying to get this opportunity to represent them at a different level. And we'll be doing a lot of video work. I'm working with Michelle Kilburn-Yeager and Scotty Beatty, and it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. I'm still with Rapala. Rapala's a key sponsor, but they have new initiatives. They're getting involved more with the youth initiative, and also with the expansion of another tour. They've had to spread their dollars over, more platforms. So still with Rapala, but my opportunity going forward is with Mercury Marine.
Cool. I got a question about baits. I asked this to Mark before you came on. Obviously, you're one of the foremost probably authorities on vintage fishing tackle. Would you not agree?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No, not at all. No, there's guys that are so much smarter and more versed on the subject than I am. I might be the fourth guy as far as passionate about it. I like it a lot, but there's a lot more knowledgeable people out there. And in fact, I write about it from time to time and feature some of those people. And anybody that has an interest in the hobby, they should get involved with the National Fishing Lure Collectors Club, or the Florida Antique Tackle Collectors Club, or the Old Reel Collectors Association. There's a lot of clubs out there. You can just Google collector clubs for fishing, and you'll find them. There's chat boards, message boards. It's pretty well organized nowadays, and there's a lot of shows. Anybody interested can go to show. I just got back from Milwaukee, the Great Milwaukee Classic, which is one of the biggest shows in the country. And next month will be the Daytona International Antique Tackle Show, and that's a big show also. So there's a lot of venues relative to the hobby, and you can get involved at just about any level you choose. I mean, you can collect contemporary lures. You can collect things that were made 200 years ago or before.
What has changed more since the popularity of social media and Facebook and all that, and tournament bass fishing or antique lure collecting?
I think they both have progressed right along. I mean, There's a lot of older people that are in the hobby of collecting, whatever it is. But in the context of what we're talking about, a lot of the collectors are older guys, and they're not computer savvy, and they get left behind a little bit. And it's sad because I try to encourage them to, get a little bit involved. And some of them are just, they're old school. They don't care. They're going to do it at their own pace. And I'd like to see this younger generation really get involved. It's an awesome hobby. It's the tools of our trade. It's what fishing was built on. A lot of people don't realize this, but the actual lure itself, not spinners. Spinners were created in Europe, but as far as plugs or lures as we know them today, those originated in this country. That's a U.S. invention. And bait casting reels for bass fishing, those were created by watchmakers in the 1800s. So much of fishing has really developed in this country and in our culture, not other cultures. And that's something to be proud of, especially relative to bass fishing.
Matt, I don't know if it's still there. I feel stupid that I don't know the guy's name. I think his first name was Carl. Who was it? Bernie. He had the collection at the Tulsa Aquarium.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
That's Carl White.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Carl White.
Couldn't remember his last name.
There's a lot of really mature collections, thank God, because so much of this stuff got discarded over time. Here, I just happen to be prepared for you guys. I'm going to show you something. This box is for the first hollow-bodied frog in the history of fishing, to my knowledge at least, and I think it's accepted among other collectors, knowledgeable collectors. This is I got it upside down, sorry. This is the Hastings Weedless frog, and it's a hollow-bodied rubber frog. There it is right there, if you can see it.
Yeah.
And it was 1895 when this came out. So Dean Rojas, you need to take notes and take a back seat for a second, because this is about way before your time.
Do they have a popping version?
No, there wasn't a popping version. I can't credit them for that, but they had mechanical versions. Here's a Hosmer frog. This is in the 1930s, and it's a mechanical frog. You can see the legs move.
If you're listening to this on iTunes, you need to get onto our YouTube Bass Talk Live, or go through the Bass Talk Live page on basszone.com.
That is really cool.
Bernie is showing some goods.
Yeah, and that came in a box also.
So wait, you pull it from the front and then the legs swim?
Yeah, as you pull the line tie, it's spring loaded. As you pull the line tie and then relax the line, the legs will go back like that.
Put it up just a little bit higher. There you go.
And so you actuate it like I'm pulling the line tie.
That's awesome.
Here's the belly. And it's got weed guards. I mean, they thought things through back in the day. People think that weedless hooks were something that came around in the 50s or 60s. There's 1895 with weedless hooks. And I want to tell you, these hooks are so sharp, it's scary. They're as good as any VMC hook on the market today.
Wow. So
yeah, that's hollow-bodied rubber, and it's hand-painted with glass eyes. It's just a really cool thing, and what's remarkable is it happened so long ago.
That's 100-plus-year-old bait right there.
1895.
So how do you find that? Do you say, okay, you hear about it or you learn about it and then you seek it out, and then
sometimes, Matt, the stuff finds you. There's things I'm interested in and I look for, but you'll be at a show and then there it is on some guy's table at a show, and it's for sale or for trade. Not everybody will sell stuff. A lot of it comes by trade or barter. And some of it's the value is in the eye of the beholder. If you want it bad enough, you're going to pay whatever they're asking.
So you just bring a satchel of old lures that everyone else does, and you just have a swap where guys might collect a minnow bait that you have, and they've got a frog that you want, and you kind of have an idea of what the general value is, and then you're like, two of those for this one, or.
Pretty much. It's, the setting the market or establishing the markets, you have to have enough of a certain item to change hands to establish a track record. But it's a barter system. We bring them in cases, glass cases or plexiglass cases, or in tackle boxes. That's generally how they're presented. Some of the guys are really professional in their displays. They're museum grade exhibits. Daytona is just a remarkable show for that. There's a lot of really incredible historical stuff, really significant stuff that speaks to the evolution of the sport and to lure development or tackle development. You know, it's rods, reels, creels, nets, you name it. I mean, ephemera. I mean, a lot of guys collect paper.
So who is the KVD of vintage lure collecting? Who is the guy that...
That's Joe Stagnitti. We call him the Stag. He's a New Yorker. He's a broker, and he makes a really good living brokering antique tackle, primarily lures. And he is probably the most knowledgeable guy in the hobby. There's another guy, Bill Sonnet. I put him right there with him. There's other guys. I mean, it's all dependent on the area of collecting. If it's reels, there's guys for that. If it's, creels, like the baskets they use for putting trout in, there's guys for that. Early metal, there's guys for that. So, to rank me among the top 4, that was a stretch. I'm way down the list. I'm probably ranked in the hobby about like I am in fishing.
Come on.
You're ranked, though.
Yeah.
Okay,
the
all right.
Stag.
Yeah.
The Stag. He's an awesome guy, man. He knows his stuff, and he makes a really healthy income doing just that, brokering tackle.
Bernie, how's the saltwater fishing in Florida?
I can speak to that. It's been really good. Last winter we had a fish kill up in the northern part of the state, primarily because of the cold front. We had a really bad cold front come through, and we were starting to establish a snook population in the northern part of the state. And I thought it was decimated, but we had a really good summer and fall this year that led me to believe they didn't really make the kill didn't make that much of a dent. And on the southwest and southeast shorelines or coastlines of the state, we have, there's the blue-green algae and the red tide, and that's taken a toll. It's really devastated some of the populations down, like Tampa and south, over in Port Charlotte area. That got hit really hard. And then also on the East Coast, there's parts of Palm Beach County and north up towards Fort Pierce that had pockets of really bad algae blooms that killed a lot of fish. But overall, saltwater fishing is really good. I go as much as I can. It's really my passion. I'd rather do that than bass fish, to be honest with you.
Wow. All right. I want to go to the instant feedback. Our longtime viewer, listener, Phil Manchu, has a question for Bernie. It says, Bernie recently wrote that he felt a lot of good anglers will now be able to compete as the financial commitment / climate has changed. Can you ask him to explain that?
Yeah. Well, if you look at Major League Fishing or the new Bass Pro Tour, those guys have no entry fees and everybody's making money. Bass is similar, but not quite as lucrative. They've reduced the amount of entry fees costs, and everybody's making checks this year. So in effect, I think it's a wash. I think you end up spending about half your money on entry fees rather than the full amount. I think the payback, kind of takes out 50% of that cost. But I can't speak for FLW. I'm not sure what they've done to up the ante. Maybe nothing. Hopefully they have. It needed a shakeup. And back when FLW was first announced, Bass responded. The payouts got better because FLW announced such great payouts. Back in those days, I fished both tours, and it was very lucrative. But the cost basis was a lot less. We didn't have $5,000 or $4,000 entry fees. Our entry fees were $1,500 or maybe $1,000. And, they're 4 or 5 times that now. So you factor that in, and the distances we travel, the cost of doing business is a lot greater now. But, it's better, especially for a young guy that's, he's riding on a credit card until he gets established. I think now's a good opportunity for guys to get in the sport.
Bernie, is 2019 a good time to be in this game?
Yeah, I do. I think it. I do think it is. I don't think you can cut corners. I think you need to come up through the ranks like most of the successful anglers do, whether it's through the Federation or a college program, or whether it's BFLs or Costas or Opens. You got to work your way up the ladder. I did it. Most of the guys that have been here for any length of time, they did it also.
All right, man. Great stuff, especially showing those lures. That was really, really cool. So anybody that was listening to the replay on iTunes, you need to make sure you check that out.
I got to ask you before we came on. So what is the difference between an old lure and a vintage lure? Is there like a year where it goes from just an old lure in the tackle box to now it is a vintage collector lure?
Yeah, that's tough to answer. I remember you guys talking about that earlier in the program. In cars, I think it's 40 years, and it's based on licensing a car. I think they determine a car after 40 years of age is vintage. That doesn't apply to fishing tackle. There's guys that collect contemporary lures that are just as passionate about that, and they can be as rare as 100-year-old lures. If a maker produces a limited run of lures, those can be equally desirable in the eyes of some collectors. But for me, it's pre-World War II. That's when I really feel like the early antique aspect of lure collecting begins, before that period.
And then last question regarding to that. Oldest, most vintage antique lure you have ever used in a tournament. And I'm not talking like an old wiggle wart or something. Have you ever broken something out from back in the day, like 1940s, 50s, and used it in a recent tournament?
You got me on that one. They're so precious. I mean,
I just wondered.
No, I haven't. The oldest lure I can think of ever applying in a tournament was the Weed Wing. And I can't even remember who, somebody built the Weed Wing, and it's a spoon with a buzzbait on the front of it. And it's pretty old. I think it goes back to at least the early 60s, maybe before. But I don't. I mean, I'd love to see what they do in the water, but you can't do that because the wood's so old, the paint's so old, and they don't work together. If one contracts or the other expands, you start getting paint chips, and I'm just not going to put them at risk like that.
All right, last question from the instant feedback. Chad in Canada wants to know, do you think that anglers get too caught up in the latest and greatest technique and lures when old techniques and older lures still work?
They absolutely work. Look at, we were talking about wiggle warts. Look at the prices they bring on eBay. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not justified. I'm with Rapala. They own Storm. I use wiggle warts that come right out of the box, made last week, and they work just as good. I've got a big selection of pre-Rapala wiggle warts. That's kind of how they're phrased now, is pre-Rapala wiggle warts. And you can't convince some people. They're going to say, "Oh, you're full of it." It's if you're not using the old bait, you're not using the right bait. But I can tell you, I catch just as many fish using the newer version. Old school baits and tactics do work. They still do. Spinner baits have made a big comeback in the last year. If you've watched the results, in fact, where was it? Rayburn. Terry Bolton just won a huge tournament. Rapala Pro Terry Bolton, and he was using a crankbait, but he also followed it up with a spinner bait. And some of the other top 3 or 4 finishers were using spinner baits. And those have kind of been shadowed by swim baits or chatter baits, the bladed jigs. So spinner baits are starting to make a comeback.
All right, Bernie, great stuff, man. Can't thank you enough for taking time out. Tell your son thank you for getting the Skype feed set up, too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, without my boys, I'd be lost.
All right, great stuff, and wish you nothing but the best. I'm sure you can't wait until you can finally get this thing going and start fishing.
Yeah, man. I'm getting ready every day. My boat's getting wrapped right now down at Media One in Orlando, and hopefully I'll have it back Monday so I can put a little bit of time on the engine. It's not completely broken in yet, and I need to learn how to work my new Panoptics. I'm excited about that, the Garmin stuff. That I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, Bernie, wish you the best, man. Keep up the great stuff on Bassmaster.com. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Appreciate
take care. There you
Yes,
have
sir.
it, folks. Bernie Schultz, great stuff on the frog, man. That was neat.
Do you see how crisp that frog was for being 100 years old?
Yeah.
That was mint condition. It kind of brought me back to, I was asking about the swap or the lure trade for sale deal, because it brought me back to my days as a young, ambitious hockey card collector. Going to the the trade shows, and I would have my stack of.
Did you have a Gretzky rookie card?
No, not a rookie card. But all I did was collect Gretzky. So I would get the packs, and I would pull out like the Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
I would pull out who was it back there? Mario Lemieux and the Brett Hulse,
Eric Lindros,
Pat LaFontaines, the Patrick
Mark
Waugh,
Messier.
Yeah, Mark Messier, Paul Correa, like all those guys, like the Yammer Yager, early 90s. And then I would put them in the sleeves. I would grade them myself, and then I would go to these guys who did this for a living back then with the Beckett Monthly Hockey magazine.
I remember.
And I would trade for Gretzky's. I've got like 300 some Gretzky cards. All different ones.
That's cool. That's great stuff. All right, folks. I want to thank everybody. The instant feedback has been outstanding this week. We're picking up some more reviews on iTunes. So please, if you're listening to the iTunes podcast, please give us 5 stars and do a review for us on iTunes. And make sure that if you're watching right now, subscribe to us on YouTube. And we will continue rocking this show for the first time in the history of this show. We had 4 shows this week. Everything went flawless, man. I have no idea. I had my fingers crossed. Everything worked. I'm glad the week's over, though, dude.
It just occurred to me, we will have a 2020 Bassmaster Classic qualifier in all likelihood by the end of this weekend. Because they brought back the win and you're in.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Unless it's a guy who doesn't fish all of them, but if I would assume if you win the first one, you're going to find a way to get into the other 3.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. All right, great stuff. Thank you once again to Bernie Schultz for taking time out to talk about all kinds of things from a Florida perspective. So, Matt, good job this week. We will be back. Check out the schedule. We'll be back next week. Check out the schedule on BassZone.com. For sure, Dave Rush is going to be live from Lake Toho as Major League Fishing makes history next week on Lake Toho, their first event. And we will go from there, Matthew. Good luck to you this weekend, man. It's going to be nice.
Thanks. Yeah, it'll just be fun. Keeping everything kind of sharp and rolling.
All right, everybody be safe. We will talk to you next week right here on BTL. We're out of here.